running out of time and stopping on a dime. It's Rhyme and Reason 474.
There's a rhyme and reason for your life. There's a rhyme and reason why you're...
Hey there, Tony here. And recent episodes have talked about time and space, and this is sort of talking about time and running. You're running out of time, as a matter of fact. I know I've mentioned before how my dad was a runner. I believe I've mentioned that here maybe quite some time ago on the podcast and certainly on TonyFunderburk.com. Dad was a health nut before being a health nut was cool. He bought a juicer over 50 years ago, way before there were any of those infomercials and the influx of I don't know how many different brands. We had a really good industrial strength juicer. He bought it. And I remember being the only kid in our house who enjoyed those juices that he and my stepmom would make. Plus, Dad would buy produce and baked goods from a health food store. What? Yeah, and that was way before places like Whole Foods or Natural Grocers or, Trader Joe's or whatever store you consider a health food or more nutritional, whatever. Yeah, Dad was ahead of his time in the world of healthy living. So that made it an even bigger shock when the doctor told him at age 42 that he was running out of time. Running out of time for my dad was a diagnosis of terminal kidney failure. Doctors told him that he had 2 to 4 years to live. They figured 4 would be optimistic. Imagine being told that when you're only 42. 42? That's not very old, not these days. And, somebody drops that on you, hey, by the way, you've got a couple years to live, maybe 4. And imagine that you've lived a healthy lifestyle for years and years. Now talk about a blow to your psyche. But my dad was no quitter, not by a long shot. He defied the doctor's odds, and he actually lived another 9 years after his diagnosis. And that's while he had to endure dialysis 3 times a week for 4 hours each time. That's 12 hours a week that he had to go in and endure dialysis. I remember going with him to a bunch of those sessions. Well, some of those sessions. Say that 3 times. Say that 3 times. Boy, just got my new tongue. Can't do a thing with it. Going to see someone actually go through dialysis, that's not for the faint of heart. I can remember that the inside of the needle that they would stick in the fistula of his arm, and the fistula is where they basically tied a vein and an artery together, and it would pump up really large on the side of his hand around his wrist and stay there. And then it gradually over the years went up his arm, and his whole arm would look that way. Not his whole arm, but that whole vein going up his arm would look that way. And anyway, they would stick this needle in there, and the inside of the needle, needles that are hypodermic type, where somebody gives you a shot, that they're hollow, right? The inside hollow part of this needle could easily hold several sewing needles on the inside of it. That's how big it was. So, like I said, not for the faint of heart. And Dad had to endure some tremendous headaches. That was as a result of all his blood running through a man-made filter. I remember seeing that, start out with this wonderful, pristine white filter in a pristine plastic case, and it would turn, and I'd watch as they put that needle into his arm, and blood would go through this line and go up through that filter and get filtered, and then go back into him. Imagine doing that? That's dialysis for you. And many times that they'd give him painkillers, pain medications, those medications wouldn't ease the pain, and he'd want me to massage his neck and his head. And because, they gave him stuff like Percodan and Percocet, and I'm not familiar with those, what they do, or probably even stronger stuff now. But it wouldn't work, and he'd ask me when I was around him. I wasn't always around him, but when I was, he'd really lay it on thick and say, "It must be your piano playing because your strong fingers are a lot more effective than anybody else's." And so I go, "Hey, Dad, can I get some pancakes with all that butter?" And he liked it when I would come over and give his head a rub or his back, and sometimes he would lay out on his bed and I would massage, most of him because his circulation was poor. And then in, January of 1986, he lost his fight with that battle. And that was at the ripe old age of 51. Can you imagine? Those of you who listen to this and maybe you've lasted longer than 51 years, I have. Now, why did I share all this with you? After all, his struggle wasn't completely unique. Millions of other people have suffered and died. But I don't know their stories. So I shared my dad's story because every person needs to understand and remember there's a time limit to this life. And you don't know how long that's going to be. Even if you're one of those invincible 20-somethings, you're running out of time because one day, and believe me, it'll come much sooner than you can imagine, your life will be stopping on a dime. It will come to an abrupt halt. But that's only this part. This time, you're spending here on good old planet Earth. It's the time you have to decide where you'll spend eternity. And just in case you didn't know, eternity is time without end. I've been talking about that recently. So where will you spend your time? Because we've all been diagnosed with a terminal disease. It's called sin. And unlike a pandemic, which affects a percentage of the population, sin nails every single one of us. Now, of course, you might think I'm off my rocker. You might think I've got it all wrong. But what if I'm right? What if it's true, all these things I've been saying to you? What if you die and it's not the end? What if your life is nothing you can defend? You think I'm wrong and that I don't walk in the light? But what if I'm right? Okay, I'll leave you with that thought, that question. And until next time, remember, life has rhyme and reason because God made you.
There's a